Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode, we're going to be talking about human rights of Missouri prisoners. And with me, I have a couple of people who are very well-versed in human rights issues from different points of view. I have Randall Cahill, who is an attorney with Cahill Partnership.
How are you, Don?
Thank you very much for joining us again on Green Time. And for the first time, we have Angelika Mueller-Rowry, who is with Missouri Cure, which deals with rights of prisoners. Do I have that correct?
Yes, it's a prisoner reform organization.
Prisoner reform organization. Now, Randall Cahill, before the show you told me that something which is a hot topic these days is confidentiality agreements. In early 2017, that became very hot. Now, I don't even, before you told me about that, I didn't even know what a confidentiality agreement was with regard to prisoners. Could you explain to us what's going on with that and why it's an issue in early 2017?
Don, I can tell you that the Missouri Department of Corrections has exploded in the last 6 months. And it's based on knowledge that there have been several discrimination, sexual harassment cases, rehabilitation cases that have caught the ire of many of our legislators. Within the period of 2002 to 2006, the prison system, or the Missouri Attorney General, settled about $350,000 worth of cases. Between 2012 and 2016, they've settled about $7 million worth of cases.
So that's an enormous increase.
It's an enormous increase, Don. And one of the things that concerns us is the fact that these things have been done through special confidentiality agreements or settlement agreements, which won't allow the side who took action against the state of Missouri to complain or discuss the facts of their case with anybody.
So what we know is that a whole lot of things have been happening with prisoners, but we don't know what they are.
Well, no, we actually do because of the sunshine laws in the state of Missouri, although the plaintiff may not be allowed to talk about it. Because of our sunshine laws, you can get the information on the settlement of cases, what they were, and some of the allegations of public record, which were part of the court file. And what it shows is that our prison system has, been cloaked for the last 2-3 decades with a wall that's so high that nobody can see into it. And they have been settling these cases. They're not coming out of the Department of Corrections budgets. They're coming out of the Attorney General's office. And they're being settled, and enormous amounts of taxpayer dollars have been wasted and squandered selling of a series of cases in which the public and the legislature has no idea what's going on.
Do you have any idea? Has anyone looked at these to see what sort of problem? I mean, obviously, if people are getting cases settled that sum to the millions of dollars, there's something going on.
There have been 2 cases settled in the first 6 months of this year that amount to about $4 million. And there are another 33 in the docks waiting to be tried by the courts across the state of Missouri. And these are complaints by employees who work within the prison system, correction officers, caseworkers, people that work within the prison system that have experienced some type of sexual harassment, some type of racial discrimination, some type of retaliation for complaints that they've made to the prison officials.
Okay, so the prison system in Missouri, it might not be on the network news, but there's things going on.
There are things going on. In fact, the longtime director of the Missouri Department of Corrections, a fellow by the name of, what's his name? George, Andy, do you recall?
The director?
The director of the prison system.
Lombardi.
Okay.
Lombardi has just resigned as of December. There's been a new director appointed. December 2016, he resigned. There's been a new director appointed by Governor Greitens, and there are active investigations going on into what's going on inside the Missouri Department of Corrections by the Speaker of the House, and the chairman of the committee, Paul, what's his name? Fritzwork, or what is it? Let me see if I can look at my notes and see.
Fitzwater.
Okay. Todd Richardson, who's the Speaker of the House, and Paul Fritzwater, who is the chairman of the Corrections Committee, have open investigations.
Okay.
Millions of dollars have been squandered in the prison system, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg as to where we're going.
Okay, so Angie, are you familiar with some of the things that have been going on? I mean, before the show, you mentioned PREA to me, PREA. Do I have that right? And,
Yes.
and tell me what that is, because I don't think that
Okay.
most people do not know
Yes.
about it, and what that has to do with prisoner abuse.
It stands for Prisoner Rape Elimination Act, and is supposed to prevent that prisoners get, sexually abused and, harassed and all that. And, kind of in relation to what you were mentioning regarding the correctional officers and, those peers, there's a lot going on just for that prisoners experience the same thing. And for them, they are even more vulnerable because whenever they bring something to the attention of, they have to go through the grievance procedure.
That's correct.
So oftentimes they have to file the grievances exactly with this person who has been harassing or even sexually abusing them, and oftentimes, those grievances just land in a paper waste basket. So they are not even being processed, or if they are processed, there's never anybody found guilty because you have this, as you mentioned, you have this wall around the prisons. There's no oversight. There's no oversight, independent oversight that would guarantee that people, that their voices are being heard. So in this context, I think I need to mention that I started working for Missouri Cure 3 years ago after my husband died of medical neglect and malpractice and delayed diagnosis, but we'll come to the medical stuff later. I started collecting mainly letters from prisoners who were writing about their medical needs or,
Yes.
Where they were neglected and all that. But also they were mentioning a lot in regards to, abuse and about particular also PREA cases. That are not being followed up on.
Okay,
And
so
I do
together,
have
a lot of these cases that are going to come to light will be cases about medical abuse or sexual abuse, medical neglect or sexual abuse.
yes, medical negligence, medical malpractice, delayed diagnoses. But here in this context, I think we're talking about kind of some examples of how prisoners are being treated, and particularly being sexually harassed and exploited. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a great word. And Don, what I say when I say we're scratching the tip of the iceberg, the Missouri Department of Corrections is self-policing. There's no oversight committee. The director of the prison system is the final say. You can complain to all the way up the ladder, but it's all shut down
Right.
within the walls of the prison system.
Let me say one thing here. They have a so-called Citizens Review Committee, which actually is supposed to give input in regards to, when the grievance, in the context of the grievance procedure. But, from what I hear from the prisoners, there's never any,
Any action taken as a result of it.
But
It's squashed internally.
Let me ask you this: could some of the problems have anything to do with ethnicity? And is there any difference in ethnicity of the prisoners and the ethnicity of the people who are in the system and the guards?
Todd, that's the hallmark of American justice.
Yes.
At least as Black Americans, with 12% of the population and over 50% of the prison population. The guards are just the opposite. They use the poor bodies of these young Black men, young and old, to be cannon fodder to support and to fund rural America in its quest to find employment. I think if you looked at any of the guards, you'd probably find that 90% of them, it's just anecdotal, but 90% of them would be white.
This is a picture of the Great Northwest Rolling Thunder, a motorcycle, competition. That they were
And it's from
having.
Chillicothe. And these are the prison guards. I'm sure
Right.
that your fans and the viewers can see this picture.
Yes, no, I don't see any black face on here.
There's not one
And it
black
was
face.
only an excerpt of it, they were like here, and all of them were white.
And
And
these,
so whether it's medical neglect or whether it's physical abuse or whether it's confidentiality agreement violations, there's that race could enter into it very strong.
race
Race
is a
and
part and
odds.
parcel of our
Yes.
justice system, and I
Okay.
think we're foolish. We've had probably a 50-year period of mass incarceration, where the incarceration rate has probably went up by 800%. We now house about 2.2 1.2 million people in our prison
Incredible.
system.
Almost 1% of the population.
Almost 1% of the population. We have 1/4 of the world's population of prisoners. And for the first time, because of the financing, we're beginning to address or to approach the fact that there's too much money being spent. We're taking care of the geriatrics.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about some of the medical issues that have to do with prisons, and we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We have been discussing human rights of prisoners in Missouri, and with me I have Angelika Mueller-Rowry, who is with Missouri Cure, and I have Randall Cahill, who is with Cahill Partnership. Randall, tell us a little bit about outsourcing. We usually think of outsourcing as where a government turns over something that has been a government function to a private agency. Does that sort of thing happen in prisons?
Don, that is the focal point of most of the activities that is now moving in our prison system. The government has decided we're going to let the warehousing of prisoners be done by private operations. Those that have not let it be done to private operations have decided to outsource certain services. For example, in the Missouri prison system, the health care of the prisoners belongs to a group called Horizon Medical Services.
So there's not doctors that are employed by the prison. The prison brings in a company that then provides medical.
That is exactly right. They have one motive in mind, and that is to maximize their profit. The care of the prisoners is secondary, it seems to me. And it's much the same thing. These are the fastest growing industries in our country right now. The outsourcing of prisoner care and warehousing of them, and then the medical services that go along with them. And I think that is one of the direct causes for many of the problems that we're experiencing today. Now, the state of Missouri, as I understand it, has certain obligations. Our prisoners can't pick up the phone and say, look, I need a doctor's appointment. Something is wrong with my liver, or something is wrong, my head is hurting, or I have diabetes. They're restricted and limited to those people or medical providers that are available on site at the prison.
It's almost identical to what I hear complaints about medical insurance, that the insurance companies get the most money for the least care that they authorize.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Angela has had a particular issue with this, and she has done research because she, in fact, lost a loved one in our prison system. Angela, can you help me out and describe what are the requirements for the treatment of prisoners?
Well, I mean, the Missouri statutes, 217.230, says clearly that it relates to the 8th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution. I mean, that it supposed to guarantee that. And also, says that it's a managed care system which supposedly stresses healthcare education, disease prevention, immediate identification of health problems, and early intervention to prevent more debilitating chronic health problems. It's supposed to be equivalent to community standards. And the goal is to return offenders to the community as medically stable as possible, so they may become productive citizens of the state. That's the whole, kind of.
So it's supposed the statutes for the state of Missouri are not the problem. The statutes sound pretty good.
Yes, exactly.
But the actual working. Well, this is an example of a letter that a prisoner has written. Here, I don't get double portion trays, ensure pain, and HIV meds. The nurse practitioner altered my lay-in for double portions from 1 year to 2 months, only 2 months. I'm 5'7" and weigh only 124 pounds. I can't miss my meds for HIV. I fear for my life. I wrote to the warden, but he refuses to act on the situation. The doctor retaliated against me by discontinuing the HIV meds because I filed a lawsuit on him. The Health Services Administration and the Director of Nursing refused to do anything. They're disposing of my IRRs. Now, what are IRRs? Do you know?
This is the grievance procedure. It's informal resolution requests. They have to fill out this paperwork whenever there is a complaint, whenever they have a complaint.
Now, not providing somebody with meds, such as for HIV, or not providing somebody with adequate medical treatment is basically a death sentence.
Yes.
When the person has not necessarily been convicted of murder and wasn't sentenced that by the court, obviously, or the person wouldn't be in jail. So Angie, is this an unusual circumstance, or does it happen to others?
No, unfortunately, it's not unusual. I mean, I have gathered 16 binders this thick of documentation from prisoners over the last 3 years. And
you have some good photographs of those binders too,
right,
don't
they
you?
are here on the slideshow somewhere, right?
Okay.
So,
Don, let me just interject that I think that even with the grievance process, you could still be waiting 4 to 6 weeks before the system would rule on it. And we're talking about a Department of Correction that is self-policing, that is angry and irritated if anyone complains or steps out of line. So you could be giving yourself a death sentence for complaining.
Yes. And the thing is, this prisoner writes that the doctor retaliates because he was complaining. Yeah, and that happens a lot. It happens. I've seen it all over. I mean, I can if you had the time, I could read you 20 examples of pretty much the same thing in different variations, different diseases, delayed treatment, not that they are. One person, wasn't diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer for 7 years. Another person was not diagnosed with diabetes for 2 years. These kind of things happen all the time. We have doctors. Where a gynecologist is a primary care physician, fills the position of a primary care physician, and nurses who confuse medication. I have several cases where a prisoner got the medication from a different prisoner just because they had the same name. I could go on and on.
Well, most of the people watching the show either have had an experience or they know somebody who's had the experience of not getting adequate care because their medical insurance company does not cover that care. And those people may not be prisoners. If you're watching this, you may or may not have ever been in a prison before. And so if you can imagine a health insurance company denying you for not receiving, when you are supposed to have your treatment, then it's even worse if somebody's in a prisoner.
You're completely exposed. I mean, you have no way of you don't get the right to a second opinion. Or if in very rare cases you do get a second opinion, it's also a Horizon doctor, and they basically cover each other.
And the company, the healthcare company, gets more money the less care they provide to you.
That's the thing, and that is, I think, the whole root of the problem is, if you delay diagnosis, if you delay giving the right treatment, in the longer run it causes chronic care patients, which you can monitor 24/7 in the infirmary or in those intensive care units, and they get more money for that. So Horizon itself has no incentive to provide appropriate care.
Let me read another letter from another prisoner. When I had a stroke, my cellmate called the COs, the correction officers. I was taken to medical, but they did nothing. I got worse, and they called an ambulance. There were maybe 10 correctional officers in the room. At least 6 wore white shirts. They were sergeants. They put on handcuffs on me, but couldn't find leg cuffs. They sent a very young correction officer to look for them. When he came back after more than half an hour, he said he couldn't find any. The paramedics say they had to hurry because I only had a 3-hour window to get to the hospital. The nurse sent someone else. He was gone about 15 minutes and came back with a pair of leg cuffs. The hospital doctor got mad about the delay because it was only 15 minutes away from the prison. He stabilized me and said I needed to be in Jefferson City. That's a 2-hour drive. The doctor said I only had about 40 minutes left to live, so they called a helicopter and flew me over. When I got there, I had less than 3 minutes left. I almost died. I later found out that the paperwork at the prison was falsified as how long they waited to send me out, but the hospital noted the delay. So this is somebody who lived, but I wonder if there's other prisoners who were in a similar situations who did not live in order to write a letter
there
about
are
it.
hundreds of prisoners that complain. In fact, I've heard war stories so much as to say if you complain, instead of drilling on one teeth, they drill on another side. People have lost limbs in the prison system because of the lack of care, because of the lack of diagnosis. It violates the 8th Amendment, the cruel and unusual punishment, and we believe that there's deliberate indifference in terms of the prison officials on treating these things as they farm out and save save money or feed one of their buddies by outsourcing these contracts. In fact, Horizon was started right here in Missouri. and somebody's name who I know everybody will recognize, Senator Ashcroft, was one of the original participants and one of the original business owners or backers behind this
former governor of Missouri.
Former governor of Missouri and former attorney general for the United States was an initial funder of this program, and it's now probably the first or second largest medical provider. Started off as a small operation right here in Missouri in our own Creve Court, and is now the biggest provider of healthcare services, outsourced healthcare services for the prison system in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, one of the issues which I hear people stating every so often, people who don't have any family members or any friends in the prisons, is, well, should prisoners even have rights? I mean, they're in prison, so what's the problem? And so I want to ask you both, should prisoners have human rights?
Of course. I mean, human rights are inalienable. Yeah, which means like no matter who you are, no matter where you are, and under what circumstances, you always have those rights. And medical treatment is one of the rights, of the basic rights, just like food and shelter and all that. I mean, we all know that this country is not really doing well with providing this even in the community, but it's even worse in the prison system.
In the prison system, where the prisoners don't have the right to go out and fend for themselves.
Okay, let me ask you this, Randall Cahill. Are there ever times when, we think of prisoners as people who've done something wrong, or at least been convicted of doing something wrong. Are there times when a person goes to prison without having done anything wrong simply because he's told, if you plea bargain, you'll only get 2 years, but if you don't plea bargain, you'll get a lot more time?
Don, there are hundreds of examples of people that are in jail for all the wrong reasons. The Innocent Project, one of the latest creations, has exonerated hundreds of men. Every day there's a new article that somebody spent 15 years and wasn't the right person. The plea bargain system and our mass incarceration. I guess it starts with the war on drugs, where we decided that we wanted to socially control a group of individuals and people and use the prison system.
It didn't work too well. Okay, we're going to take a break and come back for our final wrap-up session. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode, we're talking about human rights of Missouri prisoners. I have with me Randall Cahill and Angelika Mueller-Rowry. Angie, what would you like to leave the viewer with?
Well, since I have been working mainly with a medical condition, I would hope that the outsourcing of medical services is being stopped and being turned into a community-based system where and also that we get some oversight. That's my main.
There's real need for oversight.
Yes.
Okay, Randall Cahill, what would you like to leave the viewer with?
Don, I think the most important thing we got is that this is the time to strike. The Missouri legislature has opened up the door. George Lombardi, the former director, has resigned. There's a new director for the Missouri prison system. There are oversight committees that are now looking into the problem. They're looking firstly at the employees, but I think we can bring them in. And if we want to strike, now's the time while these committees are going on. Let's rally our forces. Let's get as many people to those hearings as we can. Let's inform our state representatives that we want them to be a part of that and to make a difference in our prison system where the walls have been set up 12 feet high and the department is self-policing. We can't allow that anymore. We need a guard dog in there. We need somebody to look into what's going on and save our men.
And we need to remember that not only are there a lot of people in prison who basically got there because they had to plea bargain to not have a longer sentence, but even if people actually did what they were accused of doing, they still have human rights and they still need to be treated as human beings. I want to thank Randall Cahill. I want to thank Angelika Mueller-Rowry for participating in the discussion today. I want to thank the viewers for tuning us in and hope you tune us in same time next week.